My children, I will be with you only a little while longer. I give you a new commandment: love one another. As I have loved you, so you also should love one another. These words from this morning's gospel lay out for us the radical way that Jesus was calling his followers to live. He gave them a new commandment, a commandment to love. Love, that term, L-O-V-E, is perhaps the most abused word in the English language, or one of the most abused words in the English language, because we have many different senses of the word love as we understand it. I love pizza. I love my dog. I love my mom. Well, I hope you love mom more than you love pizza or you love your dog. There's going to be trouble if not. In the actual Greek translation that St. John would have written this gospel in, he used one of the four terms that the Greek language has for love, agape. And this sense of the word love is unconditional, self-sacrificing love, the kind of just complete self-gift. And so when Jesus calls us to live out the new commandment, he is calling us to love unconditionally. There is no mistaking what it is Jesus is calling us to do. He's calling us to give of ourselves completely. He wants us to take care of one another's physical needs, and so certainly we do. We take care of the needs of the poor, the needs of those around us. But also, part of that love is going to entail, and very importantly, going to entail caring for the spiritual needs of ourselves and also watching out for the spiritual needs of those around us. Jesus is very frank and honest with his disciples. He himself, as the rabbi, and in the understanding of having rabbis and disciples, it was more than just having a friendship. The rabbi, and Jesus calls them his little children in this gospel, when followers followed their rabbi, they changed their way that they lived. They left everything behind and they followed the teacher. So it was a radical change that the apostles made in their lives when they followed Jesus. And that's what Jesus wants from us as well, a radical change in our lives. He loved with that self-sacrificing love. We see this kind of radical change lived out in the lives of the saints. When you study the lives of the saints, and whoever your favorite saint might be, we have beautiful statues of saints here in the Chapel of Divine Mercy. St. Therese, St. Faustina, St. John Paul, St. Anthony, St. Dominic, St. Pio, better not forget him over here. He's eyeing me over here. But a saint I'd like to talk about this morning, just a little bit. He's not a saint yet. He's not even a blessed. He's a servant of God. But he's certainly a hero, and I think he's on his way to beatification because his cause is in Rome, and it is Father Emile Capon. And I have talked about Father Capon in the past, but Father Capon lived out very well in his life as a young man and as a priest, and especially in the last days of his life, in living out that commandment to love well, to love one another as Christ loved. Father Capon was a priest of the Diocese of Wichita in Kansas. He served briefly as an army chaplain towards the end of World War II, and when the Korean conflict began, he re-enlisted in the army, and he was made a chaplain in the 8th Cavalry and was attached to cavalry units in Korea as they fought their way through the Korean Peninsula. He was legendary for his desire to be close to the troops, to serve the spiritual needs, making sure that men who were dying or wounded had their needs taken care of, both physically and spiritually. There's a famous picture of Father Capon, and if you Google search Father Capon, you'll find images of him. But this one in particular, the unit he was with was in a firefight, and they were ducked down. All the American soldiers were in their foxholes. So they're in these holes in the ground, and the shooting's going on, so they all duck down, The shooting stops, and Father Capon, while he was down there, because he was down in the foxhole for a little while, he'd lit up his pipe, because he liked to smoke a pipe. And so he's smoking his pipe, and he sticks his head up over that foxhole, and an enemy soldier shot at him. And the bullet ricocheted off the ground, and it hit the stem of the pipe, broke the pipe, knocked it out of his mouth. So after the fight was over, the bullet was that close to his head. And after the fight was over, there's this picture of Father Capon with this broken pipe, and he's smiling. I'm sure he said a prayer of thanksgiving that he did not die that day. But Father Capon made sure that he was close to the troops. That's how serious he was in fulfilling his role as a priest, in loving the troops in that way, loving unconditionally as a spiritual father. Father Capon was captured on November the 2nd, 1950, and although he had the opportunity to escape, he stayed with the troops who were captured and endured the forced march to the POW camp at Piak Tong, where he died in May of 1951. He was not shot. He was treated very harshly while he was there, and he was, the whole time though that he was a POW, he did what he could to offer both physical and spiritual consolation to the troops. And so he would steal food. He taught the men how to make little pots out of broken pieces of tin so they could boil water. And he made sure that he was hearing confessions and giving blessings. He was following what Jesus said in the gospel today, to love one another as I have loved you. Most especially, I think, and most memorably for the troops who were with him, Father Capon helped the men keep their faith. He gave them hope, because he would banter back and forth as the communists forced the POWs to sit through re-education classes. He would question the communist teachers on their principles. Father Capon was very aware of the dangers of atheistic communism and socialism. It had worried him since before World War II started. He thought that the Americans would eventually, once they entered the war, he thought that America and the Allies would defeat the Nazis, defeat the Japanese, but he was really scared of what was coming out of Russia and the errors of Russia. Father Capon, it was thought that, as I mentioned, he died in May of 1951. It was thought they would never discover his bones, but in March of 2021, they found his bones, and he was given a funeral last summer, and he's entombed in the cathedral in Wichita, Kansas. But I draw attention to this priest and this man of God because he tried to emulate what the apostles were up to in the Acts of the Apostles this morning. We hear about Paul and Barnabas, and they preached the good news. They strengthened the spirits of the disciples and exhorted them to persevere in faith. They said, "It is necessary for us to undergo many hardships to enter the kingdom of God." Unconditional love led Paul and Barnabas to preach the gospel and to evangelize. They gave encouragement. They tried to be helpful to their fellow Christians, to keep living the faith and persevering, because it's the early days of the church. The Christians, Christianity was not popular. They had to live secretly, and they had to be very careful who they let know who they were as Christians. Part of the message is that living the faith is going to lead to suffering and imitation of Jesus. Jesus died on the cross, he suffered and died, but he rose from the dead. And so too, followers of Jesus will rise from the dead so long as we keep the faith, keep up our lives of prayer, fasting, holding on to the truth that has been given to us. But those early apostles, they preached the good news. They evangelized. They were not afraid to be witnesses to the truth. And that's what we're called to do as well, to be preachers. Maybe not from a pulpit per se, but by the way that you live. We preach the good news. We proclaim the truth. We give encouragement. We encourage not just Christians, not just those who it's nice to encourage, but people who are difficult to be around as well. There's great merit in those people we work with, who it is a challenge to be a good witness to them. But to be that witness, to offer encouragement, but also to be prepared to suffer. But with that suffering, we will rise from the dead. Living this message is going to cost us something. I'm about to say something that I really am sorry I have to say it. Because I grew up and I loved Old Yeller. And I liked Mary Poppins. I admit I stopped liking Mary Poppins when I was 8, I think. But yeah, I didn't like musicals after that. And all of the other Disney movies, they were a lot of fun. And up to a point, they were very innocent and pretty wholesome. And I cannot, and I know there are many who cannot, any longer tolerate the things that Disney is promoting. I admire their patience. Disney has been very patient, and they've been very exacting in pushing their woke agenda. But it has come into the light, and now that their full agenda is in the light, we have to stand up. Probably should have been standing up a long time ago as we started to notice some of these things. But now when it's this blatant, and it's positively disturbing, some of the things that they have produced. They have included in some of their productions relationships between characters that desensitize young viewers to what serious followers of Jesus would identify as offensive to traditional moral values, especially the dignity as we are created as male and female before Jesus Christ. So same-gendered couples have been situated in the background of productions like Finding Dory and Toy Story 4. Apparently this June, the new Pixar flick called Lightyear, it's a movie about Buzz Lightyear's space explorations, will include a kiss between two female space rangers. Now you're thinking, oh, come on, Father, lighten up. Come on, it's just cartoons, Father. It's just, come on, quit. Can't we have some place to relax, Father? Come on. Yeah. Cartoons made by a company with an executive officer, LaToya Raveneau is her name, who bragged about her not at all secret gay agenda and said no one attempted to stop her or voice concerns when she went out of her way to place LGBT couples and innuendo in Disney's animated movies. She went out of her way to promote this stuff. That's from an interview earlier this spring. If you want the exact reference, I'll give it to you after Mass. But her name is LaToya Raveneau. Also, this spring, Disney came out in opposition to the Florida law that was passed in Florida, which simply prohibited this. It prohibited the classroom instruction on sexual ideology from kindergarten to 3rd grade. Just little kids, and teaching these matters. The Disney company stated that the law should never have been passed and should never have been signed into law. Listen to this. They say, our goal as a company is for this law to be repealed by the legislature or struck down in the courts. They want to fight to feed this stuff to our little ones, those who are most innocent, most vulnerable, those who don't know any better. That's why they recognize how innocent and how fun kids are and how much they appreciate different things and how open they are to learning. They want them to learn things that are not going to lead to happiness, that are not going to lead to life, that are not going to lead to ways of really life-giving love. So, if you love your kids, you won't let them ingest any more modern propaganda from Disney. The subliminal message isn't subliminal anymore, it's explicit. So shut off Disney, shut off Disney Plus. I know that means no more Mandalorian. I'm really sorry about that. I'm really sorry. But there's plenty of other things. There's plenty of John Wayne movies to watch. So, and that's all The Mandalorian is. It's a space Western. So just watch a real Western. Let's get back to reality, Cowboys and horses and guns. But this is interesting because this fight is not so very different from the fight that Father Capon was fighting when he was in the camp and engaging the communists in their conversations about radical atheism and their conversations about whether or not God existed and whether or not there really was an eternal goal in this life. The communists, in their fundamental principles, work to destabilize the family. You look and see what their practices were. They broke down the family, they got the kids out of the home, and they educated the kids in their communist schools. And the principles applied today by the modern day radicals are from the same playbook, they're just more refined, more insidious. And this is what it is. Provide apparently innocent programming that entices parents to entrust their children to the digital babysitter. Under the appearance of the innocence of Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse and Donald Duck, Disney is undermining traditional family values, undermining what male and female is, teaching kids not even to trust their senses and what mom and dad have as their God-given right to teach their kids in. And I'm sorry that I don't have a viable option for another kind of entertainment. I apologize. I don't surf the internet for good cartoons. It's not my thing. I'm sorry. Maybe you all can network and figure out good things to watch. But we can't compromise anymore. And what I'm really sad about, just as a priest and as a brother in the Lord to some of these folks, these executives at Disney, I don't know what sad thing must have happened to some of those folks who want control of the minds of our innocent ones. The grooming behavior, all of that, there's something wrong in their souls, and I'm really sad for them. And while I'm sad for them, I'm not going to stand for it anymore either. We can't. We cannot stand for this. And so we've got to set aside whatever good was there. It was good while it lasted. And if you have Snow White VHS, Snow White, I guess Snow White's probably okay. Pull out the VHS player if you still have one, and you can watch some of those old VHSs. Maybe some of the DVDs, but boy, be careful what you let the kids watch. But it's up to those of us who have been watching this stuff go on for a while now to protect the minds of the innocent ones and the young ones, because all of the attacks, like this attack with Disney, with the attack on life and the volatility we see in the culture with regards to the possible repeal of Roe versus Wade and the repeal of those teachings on, or the abortion laws. What is it with this desire to control the youth and the desire to control life? And that comes from one source, and we know who he is. He is the prince of this world. He is the prince of darkness. And so we see the playbook as it's laid out before us. And we have to do our part. A, to live like the early apostles, to evangelize, to encourage, be prepared to suffer, but to know that Jesus is risen. Jesus is Lord. And if we live faithfully in this life, we die as a friend of Jesus. We go to heaven and we're happy with him in the end. I close with a quote from servant of God, Father Emil Capon. Out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. Praised be Jesus Christ, now and forever.